Tyler Page, White House reporter for The Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal politics reporter Eliza Collins. Eliza, I want to turn first to infrastructure. So this morning, the Wall Street Journal reported, quote, Democrats are racing to finalize a bipartisan infrastructure deal and set the contours of a broad child care and education plan aiming to maintain a delicate agreement with Republicans while simultaneously plowing forward with their own priorities. Democrats remain divided over the size and scope of the other, broader bill. Liberals, such as Bernie Sanders, have called for as much as $6 trillion in spending in the package, while moderates have favored a smaller number. Eliza, what are you hearing from folks on the Hill about how this is going to go down?
So this is a very unique situation because Democrats are basically trying to do two things at once. They are trying to satisfy the moderates in their party who have expressed concern about moving forward without Republican support. So they're working on this bipartisan infrastructure. At the same time, they're working on this larger package, trillions of dollars, that is things like not the physical infrastructure that bipartisan plan is talking about, but childcare and education and things that Democrats say are a larger infrastructure package. So they're trying to do both at once, and it's going to be very difficult because they can't alienate really either side of their party. They're trying to satisfy the moderates with the first one, but they need those moderates to stay on board for the party line package. They also can't have the bipartisan package go too far towards the center because they could lose the left of their party. So they really have quite a balancing act, and some progressives say they'll only support the bipartisan package if they get a promise that both will move at the same time, which is very difficult to do.
Tyler, Eliza just did an incredibly succinct job of laying out something that is incredibly complicated politically. Tell me where Republicans come into play here.
Yeah, so Republicans are obviously crucial to this effort to pass a bipartisan deal. They have the agreement on the framework, but over the recess and into the next few weeks, they now need to draft that legislation in a way that explicates the broad overview that they agreed to with the president. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room there with Republicans in terms of ensuring that they get the support they need to reach that 60-vote threshold. They obviously need 10 Republicans, and they seemingly have that at the moment. But once you get into the details, that's where there's more room and more hurdles and potentially difficulties getting there. So as they hash out these details, that's where the Republicans and Democrats are working together. And any source of disagreement could potentially thwart that bill from passing.
Right, Tyler, and this is all happening at the same time that there is this focus on voting rights. You have civil rights leaders who want the president to focus even more on the issue. What are you watching for during President Biden's speech on voting rights on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think the big thing is what's new, right? He has been talking about this issue for weeks, for months. You know, this is a defining issue for Democrats, and he continues to make big speeches about it and emphasize it. But there's not much that he can do in terms of actual changes, right? He has criticized Republican-led efforts to restrict the right to vote. I'm sure we'll hear him talk about what, the latest developments in Texas as they try to pass their own version of a bill we've seen in other Republican-led states. But at the same time, there's not much that Biden can do beyond calling for the abolition of the filibuster, and he has not gone that far yet. So I think in this speech, what I'm looking for is whether or not the president is going to escalate his rhetoric about how Democrats should respond to these Republican-led efforts to really restrict the right to vote, which Democrats see as an existential threat to democracy and to people's ability to exercise their rights.
So, Eliza, yesterday I talked with Representative Ayanna Pressley on Congressman Clyburn's push for a voting rights carve-out when it comes to the filibuster. Take a listen to what she said.
Alicia, no Democrat should support a Jim Crow filibuster. Why stop at a carve-out? We should be eliminating and abolishing the filibuster outright.
Congresswoman, to that point, I want to ask you, what do you think it would get to take Manchin and Sinema to move on this?
Pressure from the White House.
You heard it right there. Pressure from the White House. Congressman Clyburn says he doesn't care if President Biden uses a microphone or a telephone to ramp up pressure on Manchin. How much longer can President Biden hold on to him? I mean, do you think on Tuesday that he uses that opportunity to call these senators out by name?
Well, to Tyler's point, the president hasn't endorsed getting rid of the filibuster. So he can increase pressure on Democrats to take this seriously, to unite. But they're pretty much united. Right now, it requires 60 votes for something to pass, and they do not have that. And so until Joe Biden endorses getting rid of the filibuster, it's going to be very difficult for anything to happen. And there are, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are certainly the most vocal about keeping the filibuster in place, but there are other senators who would like to see it stay in place, at least right now. Most of them have endorsed reforms, which is something President Biden has as well. But right now, there is a larger group than just Senators Manchin and Sinema who oppose getting rid of the filibuster.
I take that point, but Tyler, there's also, the filibuster debate. We've talked about it a lot in the context of voting rights for very good reason. That is in focus right now. But of course, the implications of the filibuster go far beyond voting rights. You have new NBC reporting that digs into areas of Biden's agenda that have been stalled: a $15 minimum wage, beefing up LGBTQ protections, immigration, gun safety. If and when the White House scores a win on infrastructure, which legislative victories, what do they look like with the filibuster in place right now?
Right. You're exactly right, Alicia. That is something that I think a lot of people are losing sight of. There is that opportunity on voting rights, that missed opportunity on voting rights because of the filibuster, but it doesn't stop there. So much of the Democratic agenda requires 60 votes. And as you referenced, the parliamentarian in the stimulus package a few months ago, they tried to raise the minimum wage there and were ruled ineligible to do so. And so there is so much that Democrats want to do. They have this narrow window in which they control the House, the Senate, and the White House, and that could change in the midterms. And so I think as they move forward with this infrastructure, we're going to continue to see calls from progressive Democrats, even from some more moderate Democrats, to try to move on this filibuster issue. But Joe Biden himself, the leader of the party, has not explicitly called for action on it. And so I think until we see the president make some movement on that, it's going to be really hard to get the rest of the party to come along.